We got a problem in the Middle East. We have a country known as Iran that for 47 years has been just a purveyor of terror, and they're very close to having a nuclear weapon. We can keep going and get that 50,000 up to 55 and 60, there's no end. Or we can take a stop and make a little journey into the Middle East and eliminate a big problem. And Pete, I think you were the first one to speak up, and you said, let's do it, because you can't let them have a nuclear weapon.
Is Iran deliberately avoiding a quick win, instead aiming to make the U.S. lose slowly through sustained attrition warfare? Who truly benefits if the war drags on indefinitely without resolution or decisive victory for either side? Has the Strait of Hormuz become Iran's single biggest strategic weapon in controlling global energy flows? Is Iran's master plan to provoke Trump into a prolonged war that ultimately proves unwinnable for American forces? Will Gulf allies eventually turn against the U.S. under mounting pressure from Iran's calculated regional tactics? Is Iran effectively repeating the prolonged quagmires of Vietnam, Iraq, and Afghanistan to wear down U.S. resolve? The United States, representing the world's largest military power, faces a conflict where conventional advantages have yet to yield a decisive outcome against Iran's adaptive defensive posture. U.S. military expenditures constitute approximately 37% of global totals, while Iran maintains spending below 1%, highlighting stark disparities in resource allocation and sustainment capacities. Despite this apparent mismatch in conventional capabilities, Iran has conducted operations challenging U.S. assets through asymmetric approaches and calculated risk engagements. Tehran's strategy counters superior Israeli and U.S. firepower by emphasizing insurgent-style tactics that prioritize prolonged resistance over direct battlefield superiority. Iran focuses on endurance-based methods, avoiding decisive frontal engagements while leveraging geographic and operational advantages for sustained pressure. Historical precedents from Vietnam, Iraq, and Afghanistan demonstrate that overwhelming conventional strength frequently fails against persistent insurgent methodologies and political warfare. Tehran employs four principal tactics designed to compel eventual U.S. disengagement from the conflict, according to strategic analysts assessing current dynamics. The primary tactic centers on controlled escalation through strikes against U.S. bases and regional infrastructure throughout the Gulf theater. This approach aims to elevate domestic political costs within the United States by extending the conflict's duration and financial requirements. A recent Reuters Ipsos survey indicated only 27% of Americans currently support continued military involvement against Iran. Simultaneously, sustained aerial campaigns risk reinforcing internal cohesion within Iran by framing external attacks as existential threats. Even regime critics may perceive the confrontation as a broader national survival imperative under prolonged bombardment conditions. Conversely, successful provocation drawing U.S. ground forces into Iran would facilitate transition to comprehensive insurgency operations at elevated personnel costs. This approach would position Iran advantageously to transition into an insurgency framework, imposing exponentially higher personnel casualties on U.S. forces. A second approach, termed spoiling, systematically targets Gulf allies including Saudi Arabia and the UAE to disrupt coalition cohesion. While neighboring coexistence remains a post-war consideration, the strategy exploits long-term Gulf reliance on U.S. security commitments. Decades of dependence position Gulf states as vulnerable to economic pressure tactics that strain bilateral defense arrangements. By compromising critical economic interests, Iran seeks to erode confidence in U.S. protection guarantees across the alliance structure. Gradual coalition weakening could recalibrate regional influence dynamics to Iran's strategic advantage over extended timelines. The third tactic leverages asymmetric maritime warfare with light, agile assets suited to the Gulf's confined littoral environment. Fast attack boats, naval mines, and compact submarines optimize effectiveness in shallow, cluttered operational waters. Following attrition of conventional naval elements, Iran redirected efforts toward Hormuz Strait transit interdiction protocols. This positioning grants disproportionate control over a globally significant choke point despite constrained material inventories. The resulting restrictions have materially disrupted hydrocarbon, gas, and commercial flows through constrained maritime pathways. The fourth tactic incorporates precision strikes against civilian infrastructure, including airports and desalination facilities. Such operations generate psychological strain, economic ripple effects, and heightened operational stakes for responding forces. Global ramifications amplify through elevated energy costs and interrupted supply networks across dependent markets. Collectively, these methodologies prolong engagement duration, rendering the conflict progressively unsustainable across political and fiscal dimensions.
$25 करोड़ गरीब गरीबी को परास्त करके बाहर निकले।
For the good of our nation, let's work together and let's truly make America great again.
The fastest news breaks.
Requested PM saying that we will have to speak to Putin and to Zelensky.
The biggest newsmakers.
The relationship with India is probably the most important bilateral relationship the U.S. will have for the rest of this century.
The capital delivered quite an election result today.
Expert analysis.
The million-dollar question today is how to stop this dance of death.
Ground reports.
I'm standing at the crossroad of the Kumbh Mela. Behind me are more than 100 entry ghats.
Long-form interviews.
Exclusionary politics is reflected in Manipur case as well. You don't bother because this is a small state.
Deep dive into burning issues.
It's often said DRC could be the richest country in the whole world. It's because of what sits underneath.
Why exactly did the US topple the Sheikh Hasina government?
HD videos. We don't just break news, we break it down.